Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for giving us a little bit of your time today. If you were eating lunch, please keep doing that. We said it was a virtual lunch and learn, so please feel free to keep eating. We are really excited to dive in. So I'm going to start with what we want to accomplish by the end of this time together. As I mentioned, this session doesn't seem to run a full hour. It really will depend on how many questions everybody has, but we're hoping that we'll get you the information you need and then some time to talk about it and ask questions. So by the end of our hour together, we want you to know what the business child care tax credit is, why a business might want to use it, how a business can claim it, and where to go to find the resources and forms to help you claim it. Now, I will say this was something that was created with some help from the Department of Revenue. MELA is absolutely not, we are not tax professionals or accountants, but we did want to make sure that people had access to this information. It's a great opportunity to help offset the cost of childcare for parents. And so we hope that either y'all will be interested in taking advantage of it, or if not, you'll help us spread the word about this, right? Because even if this is something that you're like, well, this isn't quite, I'm quite not quite eligible for this, I hope that you will help us spread the word to businesses that, that your families work for, and just really get this out into the world so that people know all four of these bullets, even by the end of the session, and then even more broadly. But before we do that, I want to just tell you a little bit about MELA in case this is your first time engaging with us. So, as Mindy said, I'm Biz Harris, the Executive Director of MELA. And as many of us know, although recently we've done better in education thanks to the work of so many people, Mississippi often ranks at the bottom of lists in terms of health and well-being. And we at MELA believe that if we can change the first 5 years of life for Mississippi's children, we can change everything. We can change the trajectory for those children and our whole state. And that's because, the first 5 years of life, the next slide, Mindy, are so critical. So many of you know this, you are early educators, you see how critical those first days, weeks, months, and years of a child's life are, because you're shaping and building their brains at those very early years. And unfortunately, the early childhood system is really fragmented, which doesn't always give babies what they need, the supports they need. So what does MELA do? Well, we champion shared policies that people come together to design together. We promote innovative and evidence-based practices. That's one thing that we're doing here is promoting this tax credit that could potentially offset the cost of childcare. We support the collaborative designs of solutions and action, advocacy and action together. And we elevate the voices and lived experiences of folks who work in childcare and education and parents of babies. As I have said, we are not tax professionals or accountants, but we in the spirit of promoting evidence-based or this innovative practice, actually, rather. We did work with the Department of Revenue to make this toolkit to help people actually take advantage of this policy and this piece of legislation that was put into place in 2023. So, the reason that we do that and that we're talking about this particular thing, this tax credit, is because MELA, a priority issue for us, and one of the very first things that we dove into when we were founded a few years ago was childcare. And we really do want to advocate and advance policies that increase access and affordability and the quality of childcare for all of the babies in Mississippi and the little people. And so, but why this? Why a tax credit? Why a training about a tax credit? So, and also why childcare for MELA? Well, first of all, and you know this because many of you are childcare providers and in the early education space. 44% recently we know that it matters to businesses that childcare access is a workforce issue, right? Recently, when the Mississippi Economic Council, the State Chamber of Commerce, surveyed their members, their business leader members, a large portion of them, not a majority, but a large portion of them cited it as the most pressing issue for their workforce, and a majority of them cited it as a really pressing issue. So in working with parents, that they can't go to work if they, are unable to afford or have childcare. And, now the business community is also recognizing that as well. And if you're part of the business community, then, you're probably here because you've experienced this for your own workers. We also know that childcare can cost more than housing for a family of two children in Mississippi, and sometimes tuition exceeds the cost of community college. So childcare is expensive, but it is expensive because of the care and all the things that go into educating and caring for a baby. So we want to make sure that we're not trying to we want to make childcare more affordable for families while also not reducing, the amount of money that the childcare providers make because we often know that they're working on shoestring budgets. Um, Going back to the issue of it's critical to the workforce and to business. There was recently a kinder care survey in 2025 that said that 85% of Fortune 500 leaders said that offering childcare reduced employee turnover, right? So this is one of those things that if you are part of the business community or if you are talking to somebody in the business community and they say, why do I need to think about childcare for my employees? Well, here's the reason right here, right? Like the top companies in our nation say that childcare is a tool that they use, offering it to their employees, offering some kind of benefit, helps them keep their employees, which saves them money in the long run. Also, even larger portion said that it helps them attract top talent. So they're trying to get new employees. Having a childcare benefit helps them recruit more people, but even better candidates for their jobs that they do have. So again, as you are thinking about who you are recruiting for your job or keeping and retaining your own employees, a childcare benefit can be a big key lever for keeping and getting great talent. And also, sort of the workers in the sector right now, sort of the larger, different generational populations all cite childcare as benefits that are offered to them as a reason why they want to stay at their job. One of the top reasons why they stay at their job. So childcare is a workforce issue. It's also an HR strategy to help keeping great talent. So I hope that you feel like, okay, I get it. I see that childcare benefits workers. So now tell me about this childcare tax credit. You said you were going to help me understand where we were going. Here, let's go. Okay. So first of all, the Mississippi Business Childcare Tax Credit, or yes, Childcare Business Tax Credit, was a part of the Mississippi Economic Development Reform Pact passed in 2023. So what it did, there had been a child care tax credit on record, but this expanded the tax credit available to businesses who offer child care to their employees. It can be used and it can be used to operate on-site child care centers, which it had been able to before, but also it can now be used to provide employees with a stipend that helps offset childcare costs at a licensed childcare program. There's a third way of using it as well, but we are going to talk about the second way because we are still trying to understand that third way a little bit better. But we also think that this second way, providing employees with a stipend to offset their childcare costs, is something that is probably the simplest way for a business to help their employees afford childcare and support childcare businesses and make sure they are able to keep their doors open and have the funds they need to really have these great wonderful educational programs that they want to have. So what we're going to talk about today is sort of the way that this tax credit can be used to provide employees with a stipend. Okay, so here's what we've got. How do you qualify for this, right? Well, the first thing is you have to have to apply to use this credit. You have to be a business located in Mississippi. You have to provide financial support for child care services through direct expenditures or subsidies to the employee. And you have to ensure that the child care services are provided by licensed and accredited child care centers. Now, I think there's one more thing that's not listed here, and that is as a tax credit, you actually have to owe state taxes. You have to be a state business that is not a nonprofit, or a different tax bracket that doesn't owe state taxes. So that in that case, that's the fourth thing there. This only benefits you if you also have a tax liability. So let's say you're thinking about this. You're like, okay, I meet all four of those things. I'm a business, I'm in Mississippi. I'm thinking about spending money to offset the cost of childcare for my employees, and I have a state tax liability. Okay. So how do you choose this? Why would you choose this subsidy tax credit or this stipend tax credit? Um, if you have employees who have access to childcare, but the cost exceeds their ability to pay, then this is what you want to do, right? If your employees do not have childcare access at all, then that's a whole nother that's another basically ball of wax is what that is. But this is if you have employees who have childcare, but it's they're telling you that it's just too expensive. So what can happen is the employer can claim 50% of the expenditure that they are making on behalf of their employee with a max expenditure of $6,000 per employee per year. So let's say that you have 10 employees, you spend $6,000 per year on their child cares as a child cares stipend for them. You can claim $3,000 per employee back as a state tax credit. Okay, so how do we claim the credit? That's our next stop. Okay. Again, we worked closely with the Department of Revenue to make some tools that people could use because prior to this, there was not there wasn't like a process for actually claiming the credit if you were a business. So you got a couple things you have to do. We're going to go through them step by step, but this is the overview. You got to plan and prepare for like how much money you're going to spend and what your employees need. You have to keep some necessary information. Make sure you've got these records that show your expenditures and who you're expending the expenditures on. You have to pay the child care provider or whoever that, the stipend is going to. And then you have to submit a recording spreadsheet directly to the Department of Revenue when you submit your tax documents. So that might be something that you give to your accountant or whoever is helping you prepare your tax documentation. So we're going to go through all these steps. And what I'm excited to say is that we have a toolkit that walks you through all of these steps, like a resource guide, if you will, on our website that shows you how to that shows you how to get to all this. So first, planning and preparation. The first question you have to answer is how much money can I afford or will I allocate toward this? How much money am I going to put toward this program, right? Which I think the first question is what typically do I owe state taxes? Like what is my typical state tax burden? What do I usually pay the state? And then the question is, given that it's an HR retention strategy, can you allocate additional money from your HR budget beyond the tax burden as an employee benefit. So you want to have these kind of two numbers in your mind. What would you normally spend? What would a business spend on HR, recruitment and retention? And how much is your state tax burden typically? If you're not sure, or if you're like, well, I don't really know what is a good amount to spend, we actually create a calculator here on our website, which I really love because it can help businesses. So for instance, either you or if you're working with a business, let's say that a company has approached you at your childcare center and said, I would love to offer childcare, a childcare benefit to my employees. I'm just not really sure how much money to put toward it or where to start. If that's a conversation you've had with a local business, you can direct them to this calculator. The only information they have to input is the total employees that they have, their estimated, or if they know for a fact, the number of employees they have with children under 6. If they don't know that number, a 10% is kind of a good average. So you can put 10% of your total employees if you don't know. And then the third thing is the total annual employee wages and salaries that they expend every year. So what is their total cost of their employee wages and salaries? So those are the only 3 data points they need. And this form will then calculate for you what the total cost of childcare breakdowns is to that business or to your business. So in this case, it's related to, and of course, that conversation about employee retention, a lot of employees do end up leaving over childcare issues, childcare breakdowns. When an employee has to leave work because of the childcare problem, when you have to rehire, when you have to hire and recruit somebody new to take the place of somebody who quit because of childcare breakdowns, We did not calculate these numbers. These came from some colleagues of ours in Louisiana at a sister organization called the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. But this helps businesses see, oh my goodness, I might be able to expend on top of my tax burden. I may want to spend up to 100,000 extra dollars because this problem is costing me over $260,000 a year. So this is a great tool that people can use to really guess what childcare problems are costing their business. So if you're not sure the planning and preparation stage, or if a company that you're working with isn't sure, direct them here to sort of make a guess. And then what you're going to also need to answer the questions over how much do I think my employee stipend needs to be? There is no set, I mean, aside from the maximum credit claiming of 6,000, you can spend up to $6,000 per employee to be eligible for the credit. You may decide that you really can't afford that much. So what you want to do is actually you can offset the cost by $1,000 per employee, right? Like that's doable. You may say, actually, I can't do it per employee, but if you have 3 children, I can give you $500 per child, per year. You get to set the amount. The cap, of course, is 6,000, but you can do less. And so you just want to ask, how much will the employee stipend be? And then you want to ask yourself and answer the question, what kind of care am I going to cover by the stipend? So is it full-time care? Is it full-time care for, a certain age range, under 5 years old? Are we going to cover after school care for school-age children, or both? So you'll want to think about that as well. So then once you've answered all those questions, you've done all your planning and your preparation, now you have to do some informing. You got to let some folks know. Step 1, you're going to let the Department of Revenue know that you're going to use the Child Care Business Tax Credit. This is something you want to let them know and make sure that they know it's happening. And then you also want to tell your employees that this is available to them. I think a lot of benefit packages go awry because the employee doesn't even know that they can take advantage of it. So what you're going to do is you're going to tell your employees, hey, I'm going to cover X number of dollars of your child care. And so here is what's going to happen. Here's how I'm going to do that. And you'll have that. So you'll just want to make sure that you're letting everybody know what's happening. Step 3. Now you have to collect the information that you need to be able to have the records that you need, right? For the Department of Revenue. So the first thing you're going to do, there is an enrollment form that you're going to give, that I would recommend you give to your employees that the child care provider will fill out and return to the employer. And we've got a sample form as Appendix A of our resource guide. So here's the form, and it collects all the information that you need for your records to then be able to claim the tax credit. And then, of course, you're going to have the employees return the form to you. And then what you can do is take the form and put all that information in a spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet is what you're going to turn into the Department of Revenue. And the spreadsheet sample is also in the appendix of the guide as Appendix C. We also included a memorandum of understanding that you might want to use to send to the child care provider so that everybody is on the same page about how and when funds are going to get dispersed. If you're a child care provider and you're talking to an employer about this, you could also say, hey, here's a sample MOU, because as a child care provider, you want to make sure that you know what day of the week or when you can expect the funds to come in, since it might be on a slightly different schedule than your typical payment. So that's just something you want to think about. So the next thing I think we skipped one, Mindy. I think we need to go back one. That's okay. So what we want to do is then you're going to make a plan. How are you going to, as the business, how are you going to get the money to the child care provider? And I will say that is one piece of this. The money cannot go to the parent and then to the child care provider. The payment must be made from the business directly to the child care provider. So it can't be a payment made to the parent, if that makes sense, for them to then just pay directly to their child care provider. That would make things easier, but that is not allowed for as it stands right now. So then you want to make sure, as if you're talking to an employer, that everybody knows what the agreed upon interval is and how the money is coming. And then, of course, the parent needs to know that the portion of their child care fee that is still needed, that they still need to pay if there is still a payment. In some cases, a provider may, decide to cover the entire cost. So just figure out how the money's coming is all I'm saying. Okay. Our last step is that now you've got all your information put in a spreadsheet, and I think we've got an example of the spreadsheet, an image of the spreadsheet here. And you're going to have captured all the information from Appendix A. You're going to put it in this spreadsheet at Appendix C. And then you're just going to keep how much money that you have sent to the child care provider or whatever, and that is what then gets sent to the Department of Revenue with your tax paperwork. And so that this is how the Department of Revenue will know that you've got all the necessary information to then be able to accurately claim this credit. Um, whew. So that's it. It is a lot, but it's a lot of paperwork up front. But once the paperwork has been compiled, and the process has been created, then you are just able to, again, say, invest in your employees and in their own childcare for their children, which then, of course, leads to higher retention and an ability to recruit great people. So, we really see this as a win-win for everybody, for parents, for employers, and for childcare providers, because it really makes sure that the system, has the funding it needs to keep operating, and so that parents can get to work every day. Well, with that, like I said, this did not take a full hour, but because it really is just sort of walking through so people understand what it is. It is wonderful to see all of y'all. I will stick around for just a minute in case anybody has any questions they didn't want to ask on the recording. But I hope you all have a great afternoon and that you'll help us spread the word. Please send this toolkit to as many people, anybody that you think would want to take advantage of it.